earn people's commute, right? If you're going to
Yeah.
ask them to commute in the office, you better make it worth their while. So if you're asking them to come in, make sure that that day that they're in there, that they're getting something out of it. There's something valuable coming out of it for the company. Some people will call it a genie out of the bottle.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It's not going back in.
Technology is transforming how we think, how we lead, and how we win. From InterVision, this is Status Go, the show helping IT leaders move beyond the status quo, master their craft, and propel their IT vision.
Welcome to Status Go. This is your host, Jeff Tund. Gartner's IT Symposium and Expo is a go-to for many CIOs and IT leaders. It brings together Gartner analysts, IT practitioners, and leading vendors. It gives them this opportunity to network, learn, and exchange ideas. Many IT leaders use the information to solidify plans for the coming year. Our guest today is Glenn Keller. Glenn is the director of IT for CountryMark, an American-owned oil exploration, production, refining, and marketing company. Glenn attended this year's symposium, and we thought it would be great to sit down and talk with him about his key takeaways from the conference and how he's going to use this information to plan for the future. Welcome to Status Go, Glenn.
I'm glad to be here.
I am so glad that I saw your post on LinkedIn about the conference, and this idea jumped in my head about, we should really talk to somebody who was there. I know a lot of our peers, Glenn, from here in the Indianapolis area attended, as well as from across the country. And I always, as a CIO, I always found it a great conference to network with peers. But before we get into that, I'd love for you to share with our listeners a little bit about your journey. How did you get where you are today? And then we'll jump into the conference.
Okay. Thanks, Jeff. I'd like to say I've been in this field since punch cards, but the truth is I've been in this field since paper tape. If you remember paper tape, so that
was before my time.
Yeah, yeah, right. I just narrowly avoided paper tape, but I did use punch cards to write assembly code early in my training. At Ball State. So the way I got into computer science was kind of indirect. I was a theater major, and I took the dreaded science elective that we all feared, mostly because they were in the morning, and nobody wanted to get up in the morning. So the only thing available was computer science, and so I took a CS 101, which was programming in BASIC. And the professor was a small school, so everybody kind of knew everybody. The professor came up to me after one class, and she said, "You're really good at this. Why do you want to starve? Why to be involved in theater?" And she said, "You can have a real career with this." And I liked theater, but I wasn't like into starving. So I thought, well, she thinks it's a good idea, so maybe I'll give it a try. So she managed by some hook and crook to get me inserted into the master's program at Ball State University, and it kind of went from there. So my first job, I was programming Fortran and COBOL. I did that, and everybody who's in IT management knows there comes a time where they don't want you to touch anything anymore. So that's how you get into management, really. So,
you break enough things.
For God's sake, stop writing code.
Yeah.
So I coded for like the first 13 years of my career. Then I kind of switched and started doing project management at Alcoa, and quickly got promoted into more permanent management forms. And then I was with Alcoa for quite a while, and some subsidiaries of Alcoa, and I advanced through management, eventually became the CEO of one of the Alcoa business units. And did that job for about 5 or 6 years, which is pretty decent tenure.
Yeah.
for a CIO before they finally get tired of you. And then, so my next job now is I'm Director of Information Technology at CountryMark, which Jeff described to you. The irony here is my scope is probably greater. I have more locations and more employees at Alcoa, but the scope of what I have to get my hands into here is a bit greater. So I like to tell people I should have taken this one. This is a job I should have had before that one.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's how I got here, Jeff.
Excellent, excellent. And you probably already gathered this from Glenn's introduction there, that Glenn has a wonderful sense of humor, sarcasm, and tongue in cheek. So as we're talking, you might hear some things that are, just a little bit sarcastic. Just warning you in advance. Glenn is a dear friend and a respected IT leader here in Indianapolis. So this opportunity to sit down with him and talk about his impression of the Gartner conference, I knew we'd be able to cut through some of the hype that happens around the large conferences, not just Gartner, everybody, and really get to what are the nuts and bolts. So Glenn, with that, let's dive into the conference. It was just as we're recording this, it was just a couple of weeks ago, and just give us the general impression overall, and then we'll kind of drill down into that from there.
Yeah. Okay. So this is just for kind of to set some base layer here. This was the sixth Gartner Symposium that I've attended. So I've seen how they operate. I am a big fan of them. I like taking other people on my team because I think you can just soak up a lot in a short period of time, and they're good teaming events besides learning events. And so I get excited about hearing all the new tech. And of course, you can't, you're not going to implement 99% of it, but it's important to understand it. And there's always going to be the one thing that you take away, and that's kind of a difference maker. So this year was interesting because we had COVID, and this was the first one where we've been live in 2 years. And
yeah, that's right.
It was sold out. I don't recall them ever using that wording before, and people were just super hyped to be in a live conferencing situation. So if you've ever been to one of these, then you know that there's a few things everybody everybody has in common, right? Everybody sets their own agenda, they're off, but there's things everybody talks about. And the things generally everybody talks about are, okay, where are we going for the theme park night? Because there's always a theme park night. What kind of animal are they going to give away when you fill out the feedback? And and then the keynotes, right? Because generally everybody goes to the keynotes.
Yeah.
So I'll start there, like Jeff said, a little tongue in cheek. But this year the animal was a cow versus fox, and from if you filled out the feedback form, then you got a pick a cow versus fox to take home to your child or grandchild or whatever. And my understanding from the people running the help desk, it was pretty neck and neck.
Yeah.
Picking who. The Universal was the theme park choice, which is always nice. They do a good job with that. They reserve the park, and it's just kind of a nice reward for being a Gartner customer, and they do a really good job with that. I've become a Harry Potter fanboy now
because you went to the theme park.
Yeah, a couple times, right?
Yeah.
One of our colleagues, a good friend that Jeff knows from the area, she was my Gartner executive partner, and she was just appalled that I have never watched or read Harry Potter, and so she was convert her. So on a little more serious note, on the keynotes are always excellent. Big difference this year was on the opening keynote. What Gartner likes to do is like present this big concept, and they'll have these fancy slides, and you can tell that marketing had to come up with a term, and then that big idea carries through the whole conference. And frankly, a lot of times you sit through the opening keynote and you're going, okay, what is it going to be this year? You roll your eyes a little bit, and okay, let's get off to the conference and the good stuff. But the opening keynote this year was really good. It actually tied for best session,
Really?
popular session, with the keynote given by Coach Krzyzewski.
Oh,
So it was really impactful. There were a lot of good takeaways from the keynote. So, it was that was something that was really nice. They did a good job on. And as far as how it went post-COVID and all that, you would have thought COVID never existed.
yeah.
There were a few people wearing masks, but other than that, people were pretty much flying free.
So talk to me a little bit more about the keynote. What were some of the takeaways that you took away from that throughout, and then use them throughout the rest of the conference?
Okay, so the keynote, it was interesting. So I'll give you one of the takeaways that we as a team took away that was most important to us is, take the friction out of work. So that was something they talked about a lot. So in the same keynote, they also talked about cyber quite a bit, and
Mhm.
cybersecurity. And if you want to talk about friction, nothing adds more friction to the enterprise than cybersecurity, right?
Mhm.
Is always something else, right? Do you have MFA turned on? Now, okay, you've got to, before you can get to a new website, right? You've got to, check a box that says, hey,
Mhm.
I agree that this website is safe. It's passwords get longer, they get more complicated. So cybersecurity obviously is important, especially to us in oil and gas.
Yeah, yeah.
But I'm just astounded at how much friction the enterprise is willing to put up with. Right? They know it's
Mhm.
necessary, but still, it
Yeah.
it's I think it's an unfortunate. If it was a war, we'd be losing, right? Because it's costing us as not just this country, but all countries, just an enormous amount of productivity and money
Yeah.
to protect our enterprises. Um, so the other thing that one of the other things that they covered in the keynote really focused on was surprise, surprise, artificial intelligence.
Mhm.
Except
Mhm.
that it was a little more focused than I've seen it in the past. In the past, it's been all about kind of baselining artificial intelligence and, oh my, you got to do it, you got to do it, you got to do it, don't get behind, et cetera,
Yeah.
talking about, artificial intelligence, black box and bias and all that. And in this, they were a little more focused on
Mhm.
using artificial intelligence to augment work. So they called it AI augmentation. So
Okay.
this is the transactional worker or the worker in the field that's trying to get a job done, the craft, whoever, even the knowledge worker in some cases, using an algorithm to help them get their job done better. And this is something they really focused on. I remember one quote was that they gave was that you know, artificial intelligence and algorithms are not going to replace physicians, but physicians that can work with artificial intelligence and algorithms will replace those that can't. Um, and
Okay.
I thought that was pretty
Yeah.
meaningful. It's a concept that's been there for a while. Hey, you need to work with the machines.
Yeah.
But I thought it was a really good way to put it. Something else they talked about during the keynote was they really were encouraging experimentation.
Mhm.
And what they were saying that and it was kind of tied to talent and what do we look like, right, to the talent pool. And basically what they're saying is, one, you should look at some highly hyped stuff, the stuff
Mhm.
that's kind of out there a little bit, do some experiments, you'll learn something, and then make sure you publicize it, right? So make sure that people outside the organization know exactly what you're doing, what you're experimenting. And it doesn't matter if you throw it away, it doesn't work. It's
Yeah.
the fact that you're the type of organization that's willing to take some risk and willing to try things out and willing to be innovative. And that's important. So,
Well, as you're talking about this, the other thing that comes to my mind, and I know we've talked about this before, is as you're thinking about augmented and AI, metaverse comes to mind.
oh yeah, Yeah.
It took me a long time to really understand even what that was, but what was the messaging around metaverse?
Okay, so metaverse came up in the keynote uh, because it came up everywhere. So that was my hype section, right?
Okay, okay.
So, I mean, all you heard, right? If you wanted to take one theme out of the entire conference, it was metaverse, 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 metaverse. Uh,
Uh-huh.
Now, there's there's not a whole lot of real world use cases I'm hearing, other
Mhm.
than, hey, you could use it to do this. In our case, you use it at the refinery. Some people feel like they're in the refinery, et cetera, et cetera. But there is kind of a universal use case that got a lot of focus, got attention, a lot of attention, and that's kind of this idea of immersive collaboration.
Mhm.
So that was something that got focused on a lot, got hit on a lot. You need to get out in front of this. And this, I would say, this is probably Gartner, one of Gartner's close in things that we're going to see pretty close in. Our kids are already doing it,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
right? I
yeah,
mean, my daughter's got an Oculus something or other, and she's always up there chatting and jumping around, talking to people
yeah.
uh, instead on our gaming sites. I did prior to this, I did look up a definition. Um, and the definition I saw was the metaverse will allow users to take physical objects from the real world and transform them into virtual objects in the virtual world. I like that.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
but then it said conversely, metaverse will allow users to bring virtual objects into the real world. And that one I'm having a hard time getting my hands around. I mean, I'm
Uh,
picturing like some kid designing a killer robot.
oh
And
yeah, yeah.
okay, so is this something we want to bring into the real world? I'm not sure. So it sounds like a science fiction movie a little bit.
Well, I know you're a huge proponent of STEAM, which is STEM plus the arts. So I don't know if you've read about this, but Carl Palmer of Emerson, Lake and Palmer
Uh-huh.
is going on tour with Keith Emerson and Greg Lake virtually because they're deceased. And so he's doing something in this kind of immersive collaboration. They're doing concerts, they're doing a whole tour with that. McCartney did a little bit at the end of his tour with John Lennon. They did a duet together.
Yeah.
And obviously Lennon's been dead since 1980. So there are some things like that that are happening on the creative side that maybe ends up being you know not as creepy as it sounds. Who knows? Who knows? So when
What's the guy from the Stones, Keith Richards,
yeah,
still alive?
he is, of course.
I don't know. Are you sure? Maybe he's been dead for years.
Well, that could be. Maybe he did. Maybe he died when he fell out of the coconut tree. So, thinking about the conference, what are some top takeaways that you, as a CIO, leading an organization, that you took away? What were kind of maybe the top two or three that you took away?
Well, we mentioned um oh, two or three. Okay, well,
Well, you can list more than that if you want, but
I got like seven.
okay.
So and everybody in our team that was there, and I had four of us plus my boss, which is good. So bring your boss if you can. Um, Everybody agreed, hey, we need to find some stuff and just let's launch some experiments.
Mhm.
It kind of tied into one of the CIO luncheon keynotes that we heard, which was just, hey, commit to something and then figure out how to do it.
Yeah, yeah.
I really like that message, and if you know me, that's kind of the way I operate anyway. So that's something that everybody kind of got behind, at least on our team, when we were talking about some stuff. There was a lot of DE&I, diversity,
Mhm.
equity, and inclusion coverage at the conference.
Good, good.
Gartner seems to ramp that up at every event, whether they're virtual or so. There's more and more coverage there. They came away. There was actually two learnings there. One was the speaker kind of trapped everybody and said, "How many DE&I initiatives do you have going on?" And and then he's, so people raise their hands for, oh, we got 5, we got 10, we got 15, and his message was, if you got more than one or two, you're probably not getting it done right. So
Yeah.
it made me focus. I'm on a DE&I task force here. So that was helpful. The other thing is, Gartner likes to do things on a page. So they came up with a template for doing DE&I strategy on a page.
Okay.
I thought that was, I looked at it and said, hey, this is going to be useful. It's like a good shortcut. Another thing was they had a cybersecurity business value benchmark, what they called it. And I don't know why we haven't heard of this yet until now, but basically they had 16 metrics we track that are really important to any business, and show them, this is something you can show your executives, in your monthly reports or whatever, how you're doing on those. The good thing I liked about it, in that spirit of commitment, figure it out. Most organizations won't be able to track all 16, but even we looked at it, we got 5 or 6 of them already. So
good.
Having those 5 or 6 is better than not having the 16. So we'll start with that. I liked so Emmanuel Acco, who's a former NFL player, analyst for Fox News, wrote a couple books. He was one of the keynotes, really entertaining guy. I think the name of his podcast is Difficult Conversations with a Black Man. And I think he's got a book, Difficult Conversations with a Black Boy. I'd imagine that's from when he was younger. But he talked about objectives versus goals. And I'm not really a goals person. And I felt like, hey, this guy is my tribe here, because it basically says he's talking about goals can be tyrants, right? You get fixated on a goal, and sometimes you miss the adjacent opportunity that's right in front of you. So I really like that. Jeff, I've been writing a lot, and I'm working on some things in that area.
Yeah.
And, I keep trying to find time to start something like this, a podcast. Really not quite so valuable, but my wife said to me, why don't you take your camera down to the symposium thing and make a video?
Yeah.
And, that to me, that was kind of similar to this. It's like, well, I hadn't really thought about that, but it's another way of storytelling. And I did it, and I really enjoyed doing it. And you know what? It's easier than this, Jeff. It's easier than a podcast. It's just, you just whip out the camera and you walk around. Some people see the camera, they do crazy things. So,
I bet.
Yeah. So it was, so that's kind of an example of just kind of letting the universe
guide.
Guide. Doesn't mean you should have goals. I mean, goals are good, but what if Michael Jordan had decided he really wanted to focus on his golf game? So
yeah.
It's interesting. So there's a session on top strategic predictions for 2023 and beyond. Gartner does that every year. All of them. Right. So you're expecting some technology thing, right?
Yeah.
All about talent and people, all of them. So this is something everybody's struggling with. So that's kind of some of the, at a little more granular level, some of the takeaways I had from us.
What were some of their predictions, if you can share them, on the talent and the people?
Okay, so just kind of take this in context.
Yeah.
Gartner has been work remote pro
for
a long time. And in essence, Gartner, they have a big headquarters in Fort Myers and in Stamford, Connecticut. But, a lot of their quote unquote talent, and I mean talent in, literally on the stage, and those type of people, analysts, they're a remote work environment. And they've been big champions of, remote work from home or whatever for a long time. But they were very clear, all their analysts pretty aligned on this, this is not going away anytime soon. One of the keynotes was Julie Sweet, CEO of Accenture, and she had an interesting take on it. She's pro remote work with her 720,000 employees, but she does want people in the office sometimes. But her solution to that is, earn people. I think the term she used was earn people's commute, right? If you're going to
Yeah.
ask them to commute in the office, you better make it worth their while. So if you're asking them to come in, make sure that that day that they're in there, that they're getting something out of it. There's something valuable coming out of it for the company. So I think, yeah, that's a some people will call it a genie out of the bottle. It's
Oh yeah, yeah.
it's not going back in. I'm sitting across the street from a company that I won't mention, but I've talked to a couple of people that work there, and basically what they told me was their management gave an edict about, well, here are the terms of work from home and hybrid, and when do you want it in the office, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And pretty much everybody ignored it,
Yeah, yeah.
right? Managers are not enforcing it, supervisors are not enforcing it. And I can see that parking lot every day, it's empty.
Yeah, yeah. People want that flexibility. They don't want it to be dictated to
Right.
for that.
I mean, it's also started to be seen as a diversity issue, particularly, from the standpoint of people that are neurodiverse, people that might need accommodations and handicaps,
Mhm.
or for working moms.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's very true. I hadn't thought about it as a diversity issue. One of the other things that you mentioned, Glenn, in preparation for this is you called it the maturing of digital, and I don't know if that was a quote directly from the conference or if that was your quote. But what did they mean by that? What's your takeaway regarding digital?
Okay, so that was my term, maturing of digital, because you constantly have this drumbeat of digital transformation.
Mhm.
And a few years ago it was every company is an IT company.
Yeah.
That would be interesting because nothing would ever work. But we know that, right?
Uh, yeah, yeah, yeah. We're actually recording this on Zoom today instead of our normal platform, Zencaster, because we couldn't get Zencaster to work for some reason. Not a knock on them. I think there's a firewall issue. But anyway, that if we sound different, that's why. But again, you get two technology professionals together, and there's technology problems.
Right. And that's some of that cybersecurity friction we talked about.
Yeah, yeah,
Right?
yeah.
I'm quite sure there was some component that was blocking it from working.
Yeah, yeah. So this maturing of digital. Sorry, I interrupted your train of thought there. But I had to call that out. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, it's what I've seen is this whole this thing a few years ago where, oh my God, digital, 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 uh, to more of a nuanced approach. Like one of the presentations that I thought I would never hear was entitled, How Digital Does Your Company Need to Be? Uh,
Ah,
so a little more realistic approach, saying
yeah,
not everybody needs to have digital transformation. Where's the business case? Where does it make sense? We don't need to throw robots at everything if their robot's going to provide absolutely no value or create
right,
friction.
right.
So that's what I meant by maturing. It's more use case driven, and there's a lot more use cases in the industry, and it's not so much of a hype
Yeah,
as
yeah. Gotcha. And I think that's a great pragmatic approach to technology, right? It's never been about technology for technology's sake. It's what does the business need to make it successful and connect with its customers, right? As you look back on that, what was it, 3 or 4 days that you were at this conference? What's the overall takeaway that I can envision you sitting on the plane on your way home, thinking about the conference. What was the overall takeaway?
yeah. I gotta tell you, the area that we have to cover as IT leaders is just breathtaking. I mean, there are 5 or 6 full-time jobs if you were to really focus on that.
Mhm.
And this is all goes on top of being a leader for the people on your team.
Right.
Most of us that are kind of in the mid-size space, we don't have, oh, okay, do some experiments. Well, okay, great. I'll have my crack
My,
R&D team, which also happens to be my network guy, right?
mhm. Yeah, yeah,
Go off,
yeah.
go off and do an experiment. So, we have to run, our businesses do really depend on our technology stack. And we
Mhm.
have to run that as efficiently as possible, as cost effectively as possible. We have to maintain the current footprint, meaning that there's something always needs to be upgraded, patched, whatever. We need to protect the enterprise, which is just, my God, it's crazy.
Mhm.
Um, and oh yeah, and I forgot, we got to transform the enterprise while we're at it.
Yeah.
And then and there's different verticals you get into there, like data analytics, and it's just things that we didn't have to think about, even since I've been in a leadership role.
Yeah.
That
Well,
that's
and it is that breadth is just it can be overwhelming, can't it?
it can, yeah.
Well, Glenn, we're running up on time, and I want to ask you a question. I know you've listened to Status Go episodes before, so I'm gonna put you on the spot like I do a lot of our guests because we like to leave our listeners with this solid call to action, very explicit call to action. So, what are one or two things that our listeners should go do tomorrow because they listened to our conversation today?
Okay, so the first thing that I would say, given where we are with talent, is you need to do something to make sure that you've got an enterprise that's going to attract talent. And I'm not just talking about IT talent. I mean across the enterprise. One of the things I heard there was kind of this idea of a digital employee experience
Mhm.
and an employee experience strategy. I've never heard quote unquote employee experience strategy before. So to me, that is, no matter what else we talk about on here, if I'll make a joke about the network guy, but if you don't have the network guy that can do the experiment, if
Right.
you have one that's, kind of not all that great, it's none of that's going to matter. Your
Mhm.
talent is everything. And I think IT can play a big role. And it works both ways. It's a little bit selfish as IT leaders because we want the best people, but we're in a position to help the enterprise, like I said, with experiments and those sorts of things that we could put out there. Use your marketing people to help you with that too.
Help you in what way?
Publicize it, right? To
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
get it in front of whether it's on LinkedIn or on the company website, whatever. Make sure that people see that.
Yeah, I love that because it uh, sometimes it feels a little bit like self promotion to promote what your team is doing. But I've always felt like the IT team is in a unique position in an organization because they see the organization as you were talking about the breadth of the role of CIO of IT leader. You see aspects of the organization that not everybody sees all the pieces. So I think that's a great call to action. Glenn, before we close, anything else you'd like to share with our listeners about the conference, about your thoughts for 2023?
I do recommend the conference. It's not cheap. It does come with a certain level of membership at Gartner. You get the conference, but this is not your normal tech conference where maybe swing $1,000 out there.
Hmm.
So it's quite pricey, but it's a lot of good content in one shot for a week. It's a good download, and as you said, it does kind of help you set up. I think for next year, um, your talent is going to continue
Hmm.
to be a big issue. But I think we're kind of joking a little bit about the metaverse, but I think this idea collaboration needs to take another step forward.
Yeah, yeah.
This the whole Zoom or WebEx or Teams meetings, they they're great, but they're exhausting.
Yeah.
And so what can we do as IT leaders to make those types of experiences better. Is it more immersion? Is it different technology? Is it maybe injecting some meeting discipline? We can do that in an
Yeah, yeah.
organization. Sometimes people look for us at how to use technology. So I see that as being a huge thing. Um, kind of at a global level.
Yeah.
2023.
Excellent. Well, Glenn, thank you so much for carving out time to talk with us today. I really appreciate it. As always, it is fantastic to sit down and talk to you. This one was even better because we had the mic on.
Yeah. I enjoyed it, Jeff. It was fun. Thank you.
To our listeners, if you have a question or want to learn more, visit intervision.com. The show notes will provide links and contact information. I'll also put in a plug for an episode that you need to go back and listen to, measuring what matters, measuring performance. Glenn mentioned cybersecurity measurements, and we talk about that on an episode with Adam Scamahorn. So look for that and give that one a listen as well. This is Jeff Tunn for Glenn Keller. Thank you very much for listening.
You've been listening to the Status Go podcast. You can subscribe on iTunes or get more information at intervision.com. If you'd like to contribute to the conversation, find Intervision on Facebook, LinkedIn, or Twitter. Thank you for listening. Until next time.